Welcome along to Matchday Live, the first Premier League Matchday Live since the resumption of the Premier League due to that World Cup break. And Newcastle, who were doing very well pre-World Cup, are the visitors to King Power Stadium up against Leicester, who themselves were on that great run of form, which hopefully has started again well thanks to that win at MK Dons. Let's find out all of today's team news with our commentator, James Fielden.
That team news then, starting with Leicester City. One change from their last Premier League game, but let's talk about the League Cup game in the week. It was a strong side that Brendan Rodgers played at Stadium MK, and it's similar here today. Keenan Dewsbury Hall returns, having picked up that knock. Patson Daka also into the 11. Jose Perez and Jamie Vardy dropped to the bench. Salah Soyuncu is involved again for the first time since the 29th of October. He's also listed among the substitutes. It's Ward in goal, Castagna, Amati, Fass and Thomas across the back. Tielemans, Soumare and Dewsbury Hall across the middle, and then Pratt, Daka and Barnes across the front. For Newcastle United, they were in League Cup action as well on Tuesday as they narrowly beat Bournemouth up at St James's. One change for them from that game. Chris Wood comes in to start against his former side. Callum Wilson drops out. They're unchanged actually from their last Premier League game, which was a 1-0 win against Chelsea back on the 12th of November. Nick Pope, the goalkeeper. Trippier, Cher, Botman and Byrne the back four for them. Longstaff, Bruno Guimaraes and Willock in midfield. Almiron off the right, Joelinton off the left and Chris Wood starting through the middle. To recap the Leicester subs for you today, they're Daniel Everson, the goalkeeper, Salah Soyuncu, Jamie Vardy, Marco Brighton, Kelechi Iheanacho, Jose Perez, Yannick Vestergaard, Papi Mendy and Wilfred Ndidi. The headline team news though for Leicester today, the inclusions of Keenan Dewsbury Hall and Patson Daka.
Thank you very much, James. Yes, we'll hear from you and Matt Elliott during commentary of the game today. But it's my pleasure to introduce today's guest. Jerry, as normal, is here. But the pleasurable part is that Steve Guppy is back. Gups, welcome
the one
back.
And only.
You're here for a flying visit around the Christmas period, and you've managed to fit in a game at Leicester. So welcome back. I know I'm sure you're having a fantastic time over in Nashville.
Yeah, that's right. Just back for Christmas. See friends and relatives and what have you. So not been back due to COVID for 3 years, in fact. So that's gone quick, hasn't it? So we're really looking forward to the game today and actually watching a Premiership football. It's been a while.
And on the pitch, things are going well, aren't they, at the moment? Have you been pleasantly surprised with how well it's gone during your time over there?
Yeah, it has gone. You know, I work at like Nashville Soccer Club, who have been 3 years now. So a fairly new franchise in the MLS. You know, traditionally doesn't go so well because it's obviously a lot of catching up to do with more established teams in that league. But things have gone well. We've made the playoff every year, which is really the number one target, well, the main target, I guess. So yeah, we've managed to get some good players, and you know, I think everyone's fairly happy with the way things are going.
Last question on it before we move on and talk Leicester, of course, which is what we're here to do. This is the off season, isn't it? So your pre-season starts fairly soon, just after New Year.
Yep, I fly back New Year's Eve, and we start work on the 2nd of January. So our holidays are slowly but surely coming to an end.
Yeah, and you're spending it working today anyway. So it's a pleasure to have you here. Jerry, quick word. Happy Christmas, by the way. We haven't said Merry Christmas
same
yet,
to you.
have we? I hope you had a brilliant day yesterday.
Yeah, I was head chef again. I'm wearing my festive Christmas jumper that I was given by my mother-in-law. So, yeah, she's done well for me this year.
Yeah, nice little shout out as well.
Absolutely.
Which is good. Right, let's talk something serious for just a moment, because during this festive period, as Leicester City always does, they look to help out communities, obviously not just here in Leicestershire, but across the country as well. So for these festive games, for each of the teams that Leicester are playing, they're making a concerted effort to help those in need. So the game today and the game against Fulham, a monetary donation will be made to food banks in both of those communities. So obviously Newcastle and around London as well. And for the away games, Leicester fans are depositing donations to food banks in the cities of those away games. So a donation was made, as we saw in one of those pictures, to a food bank in Milton Keynes before that game on Tuesday, and there will be a donation made in Liverpool as well before the game on Friday. So yet again a fantastic example and another great initiative that the club are involved in. Right, we've got plenty to get through here on Matchday Live with obviously Steve Guppy and Jerry Taggart. I briefly mentioned it there, of course. There was that League Cup game on Tuesday evening as the Foxes got back up and running. So we'll take a look back at that 3-0 victory down at Stadium MK. We're going to look back at some classic goals against Newcastle United, today's opponents, of course. Jamie Vardy there, that was what a record equalling strike, wasn't it, back in that infamous run. And we'll take a closer look, obviously, at Newcastle. They're doing really well. They've only lost one game this season. That was a 96th minute winner for Liverpool as well. So they've been absolutely brilliant. Hopefully Leicester can be better than them. I'm just getting distracted, Jerry. Just on your phone there, just midway through that little piece. But making sure it was on silent, that's what you were doing, Jerry.
Absolutely.
Yeah, ever the professional. Milton Keynes was good, obviously you were working it, Jerry, weren't you? And it was good that Leicester were able to get back up and running because it was going really well pre the World Cup.
Yeah, I think, it's the same for every team first and foremost, but you've got two teams today coming into this game who were in good form, and you could say the season, stopped at the wrong time for both teams. So it'll be really interesting today to see how, both teams get back into the flow of things. But regarding Tuesday night, I think it was the perfect game. It was the game, and what I mean by that is the way the game went itself was the perfect scenario for Brendan Rodgers. They scored 3 goals. They didn't get out of second, third gear for the whole 90 minutes. Okay, you could say MK Dons were pretty poor in the forward areas of the pitch, you have to say. But forget about that. It was the way they controlled the game. The way the goals were worked, the 2 passes from Luke Thomas, that'll do him give him the world of confidence as well. And I think over the whole of the 90 minutes, just the way the game panned out, Leicester were never really put under any real pressure. So it was an easing in game, if you want, to the real stuff that happens today.
Yeah, we were obviously referencing the fact that you're about to do a pre-season.
Yeah.
How similar do you think this last maybe 3 weeks has been to a pre-season campaign? There was a trip to Abu Dhabi, of course, for Leicester, a couple of warm-up games behind closed doors, obviously then that game against MK Dons. A short or truncated pre-season almost midway through the season?
I mean, obviously it's something that I'd imagine the players have not really encountered before, a World Cup mid-season, and obviously unheard of. But I think players and all the staff that they have around them, all the technology now, they know that what's expected of them and what they need to do to top up their fitness levels. I'm sure they would have had an enjoyable Christmas break. Actually, I remember being at Celtic a few years ago, well, a long time ago when I played, and there was a winter break then, actually, come to think of it. And it was actually most welcome. Players had a chance to get a bit of sun on their back and relax, and then you start getting back into it. So you'd imagine there'd be a chance to sort out any little niggles that they've had and what have you. So I'm expecting them to have enjoyed these last few weeks, but now more than ready for the serious stuff ahead.
Yeah, that first competitive game back was, of course, that trip in the Carabao Cup to Milton Keynes Dons. Let's take a look back at Tuesday's victory.
Well, after more than a month, Leicester City are back in competitive action tonight. Cast your mind back, all the way back to the 12th of November and a 2-0 Premier League win over West Ham. 38 days later, we are back. And again, it's with Thomas over the halfway line. That's a really smart pass in behind. And Barnes has a chance to find Vardy, who can't find the finish, but Yuri Tielemans can. And Leicester hit the front here in the Carabao Cup. What a slick team goal that was from the Foxes. Thomas with a siding pass through. Barnes cuts it across. Vardy tried the spectacular, but as it came out to Tielemans, he was efficient. And Leicester have the lead in the Carabao Cup. Here's Ayoze Perez, who takes the ball down perfectly in the box. Right-footed shot, and that is 2-0 to Leicester City. Well, football has a funny way of stinging you, and a bit of controversy at one end, as MK Dons were looking for a decision from the referee. They've taken their eye off the ball at the other. Beautifully taken down by Ayoze Perez inside the penalty area. Stania, right-hand side, level with the edge of the box, chance to cross, does stand one up, Vardy's there, and Vardy scores. Of course he does. Goals are Jamie Vardy's currency, and yet again he cashes in the Carabao Cup. It's 3-0 to Leicester City, and 5 minutes into the second half, that should be game over. So yet again, Leicester City are through to the quarter-finals of the Carabao Cup. They perform well in this competition historically, and in the last few years they've certainly made a habit of reaching the latter stages, and it's a habit that's continued here tonight.
Yeah, place booked in the quarter-finals of the Carabao Cup. Ironically, obviously, against today's opposition. That will be away, though, at Newcastle at the start of January. Jerry, obviously, as we've said, you were working on that game. Very convincing, wasn't it, from a Leicester City point of view? Yeah,
I mean, you know, as the game started, you could see, you know, there was no real tempo or energy in the game. So to speak, but you could see that the players weren't sort of easing their way in, which is understandable. The last thing you want to happen on a on that sort of night where they've just come back from an elongated break is to get one of your main players in. You see that they played a pretty strong team.
Did that surprise you at the time?
No, not really, because Brendan's done that all the way through, really. So he's shown this competition a lot of respect. And again, he did so on Friday. And again, so did Newcastle. Well, their starting lineup on Tuesday night, which they won against Bournemouth. Yeah. Newcastle played a pretty strong team as well. So it just sort of shows you how important that having that game midweek in the lead up to today's game was vitally important for the managers to get that flow, to get that rhythm back into the side, and which leads on to where I was going to get to. As the game went on, Leicester just got into their flow, and MK Dons just couldn't cope with them. But they were in second and third gear all the way through. They never really had. There was two passes from Luke Thomas that just, split their defence wide open, and then obviously the other one, the cross. But there could have been at least 2 or 3 more goals in there, no problem.
Usually you'd think a game just before Christmas in the midweek in the Carabao Cup against a team in League One who are struggling, that's the chance to make a lot of changes, but actually it was the opposite this time, as Jerry's saying, because it was the first game back.
Yeah,
most teams went fairly strong.
Well, I think you look at it in a way that it's the last pre-season friendly, as it were. I know it wasn't a friendly, but with the Premiership and everything that it means these days, I think gone are the days where you go down and play these lower league teams and they just throw the ball in the box and it's a fight, it's a battle. They seem to have gone a bit now. The pitches are really nice all over now. I mean, look at that. For a lower league team, the pitch looks immaculate. And I think with that in mind, Brendan could have say, okay, we'll take. It's really a pre-season friendly after the fitness that they need to come to what really is important. Obviously, was the Premiership.
Yeah, great goal by Jose Perez, Joe. Probably the pick of the bunch, would you say?
Yeah, I think the move for the first goal was an excellent move as well. I know the ball from Luke Thomas, the run from Harvey Barnes, excellent off the ball movement. But yeah, Jose Perez's first touch is sublime, and it inadvertently sends the defender the wrong way, and then Perez uses the defender as a blind spot for the keeper. So the keeper thinks he's got to be coming far post, but then he reverses the shot through the defender's legs and into that bottom corner. So yeah, great piece of all-round skill from Perez, you have to say. And
a word on Luke Thomas, as I know you've mentioned him already, how good he was, and obviously he starts again today. It could be an important run for him, obviously, given the injuries Leicester have in the full-back
positions.
Absolutely.
You look at Luke and he comes in and he does a job and he never lets anybody down, but then as soon as Justin's back or Castagna's fit or whatever, he's sort of pulled out of the starting 11 again and put back on the bench. So for him, this is an opportunity to get a run of games under his belt and cement a place. And Tuesday night will have helped his cause no end with those 2 balls. I mean, that flight of ball for Perez, that is inch perfect. That sort of quality of pass. That is a difficult ball to get absolutely spot on. And then his pass for the first goal as well. Absolutely inch perfect. The pace on it, where he's played, the space that he's played it into as well, so Harvey can get on. I mean, just perfect. Yeah. So yeah, his confidence will be really high today.
Yeah, the man playing in front of him is also a fellow academy graduate, of course, in Harvey Barnes. And I sat down with him this week at Seagrave to preview the game against Newcastle.
Onto his right foot, Harvey Barnes. Oh, that's fantastic! fantastic! Ball in behind, Pratt sliding and managing to hook the ball to Vardy. Dewsbury Hall, Harvey Barnes!
Harvey, firstly, how was the break for the World Cup, and how are your fitness levels?
Yeah, I think it was good. I think it's obviously different for all of us this year with the break, but I think in a way we made the most of it. We had a bit of time to rest and recover, and then we've been hard back in training. We had the warm weather training in Abu Dhabi, and then we've been working hard back here. So I feel like everyone's in a good place. Feel good myself. So looking forward to the first game now.
How did you find that Carabao Cup game against MK Dons? Was it difficult? Was it like a first game of pre-season?
A little bit. I mean, we've had a few friendlies here, but they don't quite have the same feel as a competitive game. So I think for us it was good to have a competitive game before the Premier League starts again. It's important, and I think, not surprisingly, but it was good to see that everyone sort of came back and just clicked again. There wasn't any sort of rustiness as such. It was good. We scored some good goals, and it was a good, solid performance.
I think that's an important point, that you came back and you played like you were playing before, because just before the break, form was really good, wasn't it? And particularly your personal form as well.
Yeah, I think, like I said, the break probably came at a bad time for us. We were hitting good form, we were slowly climbing up the table, but that performance the other day sort of gave good signs that we've come back and we've sort of started where we left off a month or so ago, which is going to be important. It's a busy time for us, and if we're playing well and we carry on that form that we did have before, we can quickly see ourselves climbing up the table and sort of being where we were.
And obviously from a personal point of view as well, the goals were flying in, and particularly that really well taken goal against West Ham as well. Do you feel your confidence levels are still where they were despite the break? Yeah,
definitely. I had a good goal scoring form before the break. And I feel like that's been coming for a little while. We obviously started the season poorly for our standards, and probably me myself involved in that. Sometimes it's difficult when the team's struggling to sort of get yourself up to a certain level, but I feel like everything's sort of come together in the last few games, and we look like a really good team again. So yeah, hopefully for us it's just about this little Christmas period now, and then going into the new year, myself and the team hitting them levels again.
What are you expecting from Newcastle? Obviously, again, the break maybe came at a bad time for them. They'd had a really good start to the season as well.
Yeah, hopefully it's had the other sort of way for them, where they come back and they're not quite at the levels hopefully we are. They've obviously had a great start to the season, and they look like a good team this year. So it'll be a tough game for us, we know that. But for us, like I said, we were confident coming into the break. We're going to be confident after it. If we're playing at the levels that we know we can, and we sort of scoring goals, which we have been, we showed in the MK Dons game, there's no reason why we can't go and win that game.
And from a footballer's point of view, playing on Boxing Day, it's obviously very traditional here in England, isn't it? Does it feel good to be part of that tradition and to play on Boxing Day in front of the fans? Yeah,
I think it's obviously a busy period over Christmas, away from football as well. You've got everyone seeing their families, everyone's got different things going on. And I think it's come together after Christmas is done, and you sort of Christmas night, you're getting excited for the game the next day. It's great. You can enjoy yourself Christmas morning, Christmas afternoon, and then your mind switches on to the game. So it's like you say, it's been a tradition over here for a long time, and I think it's a great one. It's always a great occasion.
That was Harvey Barnes there, of course, speaking ahead of this game with Newcastle. As a former winger yourself, Gups, how impressed have you been with Harvey Barnes, particularly his form this season? Well, certainly since Leicester came good almost, Harvey Barnes came really good as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's exciting talent, isn't he? I mean, he's been in that team for a while now, so he's one of a number of players that I'm really looking forward to seeing today. He's got his own style going. He maybe not necessarily a kind of tricky winger, but he's got a nice end result, and of course he's got a fantastic habit of scoring goals. So all of a sudden, he's a really big part of this team.
And he takes his goals well as well. I think we've seen, particularly with some of them this season, that's a clinical edge that maybe previously he hadn't had, and he's starting to get that, which will make him a hell of a player if he continues that.
Well, of course, if you've got other players, midfield players, contributing with goals, I mean, everyone's after that. I'm just seeing the goals there on the TV. I mean, the technique is great. You know, he's very, very, you know, moving at pace, striking the ball so well, and getting his head over it, and all the good things that you learnt as a kid. But under pressure is not always easy. So you know, he's someone who's, you know, is fantastic for Leicester, that you've got a wide player chipping in with so many goals, and you know, I think that really looking forward to seeing what he can do today.
Do you think that's a fair assessment, Joe? You could easily see him getting double figures in the Premier League, couldn't you, this season? If not upwards of 15, if he continues the way that he's going, particularly the way he was playing just before the break.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. It's hard to see him not getting into double figures, first and foremost. And I suppose, you know, there's a weight of expectation now on Harvey Barnes' shoulders that probably wasn't there before, because of your Jamie Vardy's and your James Maddisons and so on and so forth, your Yuri Tillemans. But he's Leicester's second highest goal scorer with 6 goals. And this sort of epitomises his season. You know, it's a 60-yard run to get on the end of that pass, and then have the composure and the confidence to just, you know, to finish it the way it is. Just look at this run now. It's quite incredible. This is 70-odd minutes, and he's just steaming ahead. The West Ham defenders know he's coming, but there's nothing they can do about it. Yeah. They can't. They're out in the feet. And here's where the composure, but this is the classy bit, bang. And I know what happens in a flash, but if you slow that down, you can just see he sort of takes that little mini breath, composes himself, and then strokes it home. That's top quality. That is top quality football right there. So the expectation levels on Harvey are growing all the time. And the stats, the goal scoring stats especially, tell you that, you know, he's up there alongside James Maddison. And so, because, you know, Jamie hasn't scored as many goals, he hasn't played as many minutes as probably would have liked, but, you know, Brendan's got this role now between him and Taka. He's scoring goals in the League Cup, absolutely brilliant. So the weight of expectation is now growing on Harvey, and, you know, he's coming through with flying colours, and I don't expect him to let up between now and the end of the season.
Yeah, as Jerry's referenced, obviously James Maddison pretty much has been the main man, I think, this season for Leicester. He's not involved today, obviously, as we know, so big onus then on the likes of Harvey Barnes to step up and be the man that creates, be the man that scores.
Well, of course, you know, there's always that expectation, as you know, as Jerry was talking about there. I mean, just to carry on what Jerry was saying there, just watching the goals, you know, for Jamie Vardy's goal against MK. If he'd have missed it, he was there behind, coming in late, you know, coming in between defenders, making that run. And you have to make, there's so many of those runs you have to make before you actually get one, you know. So it shows that someone is hungry for goals and gets in those positions. He's always on the move when the ball arrives in the box, which is an art in itself that people don't always see, because you have to keep making those runs, and then eventually one falls to you. So for a wide player to want to come in and get around that, you know, I think it's fantastic.
Speaking of getting forward and scoring goals, let's take a look back at some classic goals then scored against today's opponents, Newcastle.
Looks a very sparse 10 yards away. It's rolled short to Zagarakis. Well, got one back. A free kick of real quality from Theo Zagarakis.
The option, and it's a wonderful strike from Gunnlaugsson. Held with that left foot, hit with power and swerve. It didn't look as though Shea Given had a chance with that.
It's Vardy. And as tight as this, he's often the one to separate them. This is Jamie Vardy! History maker! 10 out of 10! And the fairy tale goes on. Jamie Vardy is living the dream. Reach. Morgan. Tim by Albrighton. Vardy going for it. Okazaki! Well, particular thrill for him. His first home goal. And it's come at an important time.
Now Mahrez onto his left foot. He'll have a go from range. Oh, Riyad Mahrez with a blockbuster. What a strike from the Algerian. Gets Leicester City back on level terms here at St James's Park. It's a wonderful effort. And Mahrez continues his rich vein of form.
It's not like he's in a particularly good position. Newcastle have given it away again. And here's Maddison, left-footed on the edge of the box. It's an absolute screamer. Oh my word. James Maddison sets off in 2020 just as he was playing in 2019.
Some classic goals there against Newcastle. A nice mix of some from your era actually there, and a Steve Guppy assist we noticed in there for Tony Cotty.
Thanks for noticing. I think my contribution in that goal was very minimal in fairness to TC, but what a great finish. Yeah.
Well, I tell you what was the most rare thing about that goal was it was scored outside the box, and ask TC himself, he'll tell you that was probably one of only a handful of goals he scored outside the box.
Great goal from Arne Good-Larsen as well. That free kick. In fact, they were all really good. James Maddison's again. The last one we saw 3 years ago was a cracker as well. Tony Cotty, of course, another one of our LCFC TV panellists and guests. So whenever you're back as well, it'd be great to see that. Right, let's take a look at Newcastle United. Then, of course, a closer look at today's opponents by hearing from manager Eddie Howe and also Lee Ryder from the Evening Chronicle.
The mood at St James's Park at the moment is very good, and it has been for the whole season. Much like Leicester, the break came at a bad time as the Magpies find themselves in the hunt for a Champions League spot. Eddie Howe's side have lost just once all season, and will be hoping their form continues at the restart.
When we were sitting down in pre-season and talking to the players and the manager, mid-table stability was on the agenda. Was in the conversation. I think if the supporters had been offered a mid-table finish, when the season kicked off, they would definitely have taken it. Newcastle have spent the best part of half a decade fighting against relegation, so mid-table would have been fine. So absolutely, it feels like Newcastle are punching above the weight. They're in this third spot. But now they're there, you get a taste for being up there, and you start wondering if something bigger and better can be on the table. And we've had 5 weeks to think about that now, and going into the restart, it's got to be a case of trying to hold on for that as long as possible.
Well, I think they're a top team with a top manager, and that never changed, in my opinion, even though they had a difficult start to the season. The quality of Brendan's work, I think, always shines through in his teams. And if you look at their players, not a dramatic amount has changed from the team that excelled in previous years. So I think we respect them immensely. I think they're a very good football team. And I think now the confidence has returned. I think they're a very dangerous opponent for us.
Howe has a number of exciting attacking options to choose from, including Coventry-born Callum Wilson. The undoubted star of the show, though, has to be Miguel Almiron, who's had a fantastic start to the season with 8 goals in Newcastle's 15 games.
Someone like Callum Wilson has got the goals when we needed them, but the biggest star of them all is probably Miguel Almiron, who is the reigning player of the month. Goal of the month. I think he won every award that was available to him before the World Cup, and he's our top scorer as well, and he's just been absolutely fantastic. So it'd be brilliant if he can pick up where he left off. As hard as that might be, it'd be brilliant to see more from Almiron in the second half of the season.
How impressed, Jerry, have you been with Newcastle this season? Obviously, it will be difficult for all teams, I think, particularly in these first couple of weeks after the break, to either pick up from where they left off or change fortunes that maybe weren't good. But for Newcastle, the World Cup came at a bad time. Let's be honest.
Well, yeah, we were speaking about that earlier. You know, you're talking about both teams in today's game. Both teams are in good form. Forget about the league table. Newcastle 3rd. Leicester 13th, is it? 13 points between both the teams. Forget about it. You can just, roll that up the league table, throw it in the bin. This is two teams in form, and two teams, let's face it, that probably didn't want the World Cup break to come. And so, yeah, I expect them, I know they had a tough game the other night and they got through that, but I expect them to hit the ground running, just like we're all expecting Leicester to hit the ground running as well. So this is going to be a really, really tight game. And when you look at Newcastle's squad overall, for me, like they're talking about Almiron, he has like completely changed the way he plays. He has turned into an absolute world beater this season. I don't know what's happened to him. He's been at Newcastle for a few years now. He's a willing runner. He's a team player. He's got individual ability, but it never just seemed to quite happen for him on a regular basis. But Eddie Howe has transformed this guy into a top Premier League player this season, and I think he obviously not having Callum Wilson is an absolute bonus for Leicester today as well. Chris Wood, yes, an able substitute for him, but I think Callum Wilson again top player. So it's a difficult one to call, but they're just a solid outfit. I think he's gone back to the basics. Start at the back, become solid. You got Pope, Byrne, Botman there, and become solid. And they've got a solid midfield three. Gamara is a very, very good player alongside Willock, who likes to get forward, and Longstaff, who's secure for Newcastle.
Yeah, what have you made of Almiron, particularly this season? I know he has previously played in the MLS. I think that's where Newcastle had got him from, and it's taken him a little bit of time. But this season, as Jerry says, he's looked like a world beater. And as we heard from the journalist there in that piece, that he won all the awards in November in the Premier League as well. So he's in top form. If you can still say top form, I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's confidence, isn't it? You look at Newcastle. Newcastle are a different team this year. They've obviously Eddie Howe's come in. They've had some, a bit of money to spend, and it's sort of breathed a new enthusiasm through the team, through the whole area. You can feel it there. So someone like Almiron, who's probably been maybe in a struggling team in previous years, is now probably really enjoying the fact that they are dominating a lot of games. The way Eddie likes to play, a real possession-based game, and I agree with Jerry there. I think with Wilson being out of the team today, with his runs beyond, normally that would leave Almiron to just drift in a little bit like Harvey, I guess. Harvey Barnes drifting off the touchline and look for those little soft pockets to try and pick up balls, and so they're going to be without that today. And I think you look at that Newcastle front line, you'd have to say that they're probably lacking a little bit of pace. That may well, help Leicester, but we'll have to see how that goes. But of course now it means Leicester won't have to drop back so much. They won't have to be so wary of Wilson's runs beyond, and you like to think that maybe that will restrict Almiron's space a little bit. But of course, with these talented players, they always seem to find a way. But it did sort of stand out really. Wood is a big target man, obviously a difficult man to pick up for set pieces and crosses in the box. But he's not going to be stretching that Leicester back line beyond, and I think that might well help Leicester a bit.
It's been a couple of months, well, just over a month, Jerry, really, since both these teams have played. Let's quickly remind ourselves Newcastle's recent form as well, and I mentioned it at the very top of the show that the only game they've lost this season was in the 98th minute winner at Anfield for Liverpool. So they're clearly having a fantastic season, and that sums it up.
Yeah, home and away. It doesn't really matter. So yeah, I say he's done a fantastic job. It's interesting, they've all been pretty tight games apart from them two, right in the middle. The 4-0 at home to Villa, and the 4-1 away from Southampton. But in the main, you would say that they're pretty tight games. I actually watched the game against Tottenham Hotspur when they won away from home, and they deserved to win the game. They were the better team. But I think it all goes back to the basics. Eddie Howe's come in, he's changed a little bit here, a little bit there. He's not gone gung-ho in the transfer market. He's not been in world stars. He's solid players you talk about, the likes of Dan Burn. Probably not on everybody's shopping list, but he's been a real good fit for Newcastle. He's 6'7", and he's playing left back today. It looks like in the starting lineup. So, he's been a really good fit for Newcastle because he's solid and he's reliable, and that's what he's brought into the team: is solid, reliable players, and he's got that little shimmering of gold dust in the further forward up the pitch. So we'll see how it goes. It'll be interesting to see. We just see Chris Wood on the screen there, how he gets on against Matty and Vass today in those aerial battles, because they'll probably have to change their play up slightly, like Gubbs has already alluded to, because he is a bit more of a target man. I'm not saying he can't run, but there'll be a few more aerial balls going into him, so it'll be interesting to see how the two centre halves get on.
Said by a solid and reliable defender himself in your playing days, Jerry.
Well.
On that, let's introduce Matt Elliott as well, who's watching the warm-ups at the moment. He's our co-commentator for today. Good afternoon, Merry Christmas, Matt. Are you looking forward to this one?
Merry Christmas to you, Batesy, and the boys. Yeah, very much so. It's a long time coming round, hasn't it, this fixture with the World Cup interlude. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see, as the boys have mentioned, how the players get back into action, slip into gear straight away. But two teams full of confidence, again, as has been mentioned. And there's a good mix, a good blend of ingredients out there, isn't there? Two teams like to play attractive football. They've got a sort of swiftness about their game when they're in top gear, and hopefully we'll see that from both sides today. And it's got all the ingredients of a really entertaining afternoon's watch.
Do you think that it will be, or do you think that it might take teams a little bit of getting used to the tempo again?
Yeah, I don't know. The proof will be in the pudding. We'll wait and see, really, isn't there? But yeah, people will look at certain things that, if they don't perform well, they'll say, well, we're just sort of easing our way back in, and use that as a little bit of an excuse. But no, I think both teams should be, ultra professional and readily prepared for the game and to get straight into it, really. It's a Premier League fixture. There's a hell of a lot to play for, as always, and teams can't afford to be lacklustre, really, and sort of ease their way back in. I think they need to be prepared for what the opposition are going to offer, and also offer quite a bit themselves from the off.
Yeah, obviously a change in striker for Newcastle that maybe Leicester were preparing for. That we were probably all assuming Callum Wilson, Matt, weren't we? So how different a proposition will Chris Wood be?
Well, I think, all due respect to Chris Wood, I think the two centre-halves of Leicester will be breathing a private sigh of relief, really, because, again, as the boys have mentioned there, he does offer a different dimension to Newcastle's game, without a doubt. He can stretch the defenders, and defenders hate players that can take them in behind. Chris Wood can do that to a level, but he's more of that target man and bouncing the ball off him and waiting for deliveries in the box. He's a goal threat himself, don't get me wrong. Ex-Leicester City striker, of course, but Callum Wilson, he's a player on top of his game, isn't he? We talk about players who are fit and ready, and if he was able to play, he'd be a real sort of handful, wouldn't he? But fortunately, from Leicester's point of view, he doesn't feature. And I was just looking at the strength and depth of Newcastle. People saying they haven't signed superstars, which is true. They've signed players that are sort of relevant for where they are at the moment, but they've got quite a bit of depth to their squad. Look at the bench there today. You got Lascelles, who was a main fixture in the defensive lineup, wasn't he? And Alan Saint-Maximin, who set the Premier League alight on occasions, hasn't he? A number of other players, their target, etc. Fraser and Ritchie, that have been brought in, but they're missing Shelvey, Wilson, and Alexander Isaac, of course, who they signed not so long ago. So they've got a lot of strength in depth at their disposal. Leicester up against it today, but Leicester in fine form themselves.
Thank you very much, Matt. We'll hear from you just before kick-off on commentary duty today. Let's get a quick reminder of today's team news then. Starting, of course, with Brendan Rodgers, what he's gone for. Danny Ward in goal, Luke Thomas, Wout Faes, Dan Amartey and Timothy Castagna, the back four. Samari, Dewsbury Hall and Tielemans, that midfield three that we've seen so recently before the World Cup. And then Barnes, Barnes and Pratt either side of Patson Daka. From a Newcastle United point of view, they've got Nick Pope in goal, Dan Burn, Sven Botman, Fabian Schär and Kieran Trippier in the back four. Bruno Guimaraes in midfield with Joe Willock and Longstaff. Joe Linton supports Chris Wood with Miguel Almiron off the right, but he kind of has licence really to do whatever he wants, and it's certainly worked for Newcastle so far this season. He'll be one of the men that Brendan Rodgers, of course, will have been preparing his side to play against. Let's hear from the Northern Irish manager. He's been talking about his opposite number today, as well as Newcastle.
No, they've done and made a great start to the season. No, they're a very good side. They've got good physicality in the team and good quality. I think Eddie's done a fantastic job since he's gone in there. So if you look on the field, Newcastle, they've signed players that have really improved the squad and the dynamic of the team. They've had talented players in there, but the players they brought into the back line in particular and goalkeeper really gives them, that real dominance in the back line, and that gives the base for the rest of the team to work. So Eddie's done a fantastic job there and with those players. So yeah, it's a really good game for us.
Do you expect to still see them there in the shake-up for the title race come the end of the season?
Well, I think there's still a long way to go. It's, the experiences that I've had here when you're up there in those positions is that you need some luck as well with injury. And I said the same thing about Arsenal last year. I felt that they could have been in the top four as long as they keep their best players available. It happened to us where towards the end of our 2 seasons when we just missed out on Champions League, we didn't have our best players available, and that's a challenge. But I'm pretty sure that Newcastle will strengthen their squad, and if they do that, then with the players they have already there, I'm sure there'll be a big motivation to stay there.
Team news wise, obviously you touched on James Maddison. You've had the cup win in the week. How are you looking after that one and going into the game with Newcastle?
Yeah, but we feel in a good way. Of course, we hadn't started the season well, but the consistency along with the structure that the players have played in the last 7 to 8 weeks was absolutely brilliant, and it gave us a real foundation then, and so we hope to continue with that. So the feeling's really good. We feel we're getting back to our level again of quality, and but more importantly our defensive mentality. We weren't defending as well as we have done the last 8 games, what we did in the first 7. So it'll be much better from that perspective. So we want to continue with that mentality.
On a personal level, Brendan, how excited are you? How much are you looking forward to being back out on the touchline for a Premier League game?
Yeah, very much so. I was excited the other night for a cup game against MK Dons. Just felt great again, getting my bag ready to travel and get the game in. And likewise now to be, we had 6,500, I think it was the other night at MK Dons, and so the support was great. And now Boxing Day tradition in this country should be a great game, great atmosphere, and we want to really go and attack.
Yeah, Brendan Rodgers there saying that Leicester will be going out and attacking today, which is good to hear from us. We'll be watching the game out there in the press box, of course. And do you think that's the way they'll go at this one, or will they look to stay tight firstly? What do you think? They're coming up against a team, as Jerry says, that have got the best defence, or the joint best defence in the league.
Yeah, I mean, obviously two solid teams, I guess. When you look at the team selections, Newcastle are missing Wilson, that we spoke about, but also St. Maximin, who's very, very exciting player, someone who was really open with playing, if I'm being honest. But there's someone who can pick a lock and bring that pace. But they've gone down a different road, so I can imagine being quite a big overload for both teams in midfield today. Obviously Pratt on the right wing, not really an out-and-out winger as such. So I can imagine a lot of this battle going on in that midfield area. But you know what? I just, when you look at that Newcastle and everyone's saying how well Burns has done for them. Big centre half playing fullback. There's a part of me that thinks, if the game is tight, then maybe someone like Mark Albrighton could come on You know, that lovely little chop that he does. You know, someone that big and, you know, tall. I mean, straight lines, I'm sure he's very effective, and set pieces he'd be very effective, Burns. But actually get someone really running at him, I'd be really interested to see how he fares with that.
Right, we've got time for a quick prediction each. Jerry, starting with you, how do you see it going today?
Well, you've got two solid defences playing today, so I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw.
We thought you were about to say goalless draw, and then we're good to that. Yeah, just quickly from you as well.
Do you know what? Leicester at home, they got that advantage. I think Leicester are going to win today. It'll be a very tight game.
Hopefully you're right. Hopefully you're right. Plenty of goals, as Jerry's just said, against two tight defences. Right, stay tuned. Just after this short break, of course, we'll have all the commentary of all the action here from King Power Stadium today as Leicester resume their Premier League campaign after that break for the World Cup. Don't go anywhere.
Because memories never fade, no matter how long. We'll still remember the moments of excitement and the impressions of Thailand. Amazing Thailand, now even more amazing.
Biết Sài Gòn.
Chang Beer. We brew friendship.
Hello, good afternoon everybody, and season's greetings. Welcome along to King Power Stadium. Premier League football is now finally back after a 44-day break from action, and Leicester City restart as they host a new look Newcastle United. It's a big test for Brendan Rodgers' side upon their return to league action, as they look to make it 5 wins in their last 6 Premier League games and pick up where they left off, having won at West Ham back in mid-November. They've already warmed up with that comfortable win, MK Dons in midweek, but this will be a much stiffer test against one of these standout teams so far this season. An opportunity is there to move firmly into the top half of the table as they continue to recover from the early season slump. Newcastle were slender winners against Bournemouth to take them into the last 8 of the League Cup in midweek, and Eddie Howe has his side mixing it with the league's best this campaign, having won 5 consecutive Premier League games as part of a 10-match unbeaten run overall. Their last result before the break being a 1-0 win against Chelsea. No side has matched the Magpies for this kind of sustained winning run this season, and the Geordies know that another maximum return here would take them second in the table for the first time in almost 20 years. In terms of the team news today, 2 changes for Leicester from midweek. Jose Perez and Jamie Vardy dropping to the bench. Kiernan Dewsbury-Hall has recovered from a knock to take his place in the 11. Patson Daka starting up front. So starting for Leicester today, Danny Ward the goalkeeper, Castagna, Amati, Fass and Thomas across the back. Tielemans the captain, Simare and Dewsbury-Hall in the middle, Pratt and Barnes either side of Patson Daka. For Newcastle, it's the same Premier League side for them as their last league game last month. 1 change from midweek as Chris Wood comes in for Callum Wilson. Pope the goalkeeper, Trippier, the captain, at right back. Fabian Schär, Sven Botman and Dan Burn across the back. Bruno Guimaraes just in front of them. Longstaff and Willock either side. Almiron off the right. Joelinton off the left. And Chris Wood starting through the middle. King Power Stadium is filling up. And the man who was filling up downstairs a short while ago is Matt Elliott. Matt, how are you?
I'm good, James. Thank you very much. Looking forward to an afternoon's entertainment. And I think we're going to get that this afternoon. The two sides packed with quality, packed with endeavour, and both sides on good form. All the makings of an exciting fixture.
What do you make of this compared to the game, the League Cup game on, earlier this week? Because it's going to be so different, isn't it? I mean, so many of the Premier League sides had League Cup games to come back to, but it's just another step on the way, isn't it? Is there some kind of unknown about this game?
Yeah, I suppose so. No one quite knows, even the players themselves and the managers, exactly how individuals are going to react. And you'd like to think that most of the players would be champing at the bit, wouldn't you? Because they haven't had any real game football for such a long time. The majority of the players, more difficult for the players that featured in World Cup fixtures. To come into this game back in the Premier League, but in the day it is the Premier League, and the Premier League is a huge, huge attraction, and it's a huge reason to be at your very best and your most professional. So I don't think there are any excuses for players to be easing themselves back in. Those the Carabao Cup games have actually come at a good time, I think, enabling teams to sort of blend themselves back into the fray, if you like. But I think the atmosphere, the Boxing Day, historical aspect of it, the Newcastle travelling in their thousands down here, their supporters, creating a wonderful setting for the game, and I'm sure the game won't disappoint either with all the ingredients that are there.
I guess ultimately, everyone's in the same boat here. Newcastle went away to Saudi Arabia and played a couple of games, had a training camp out there. There is only so much you can do.
Yeah. It is a weird one. There's no getting away from that, and I think it'd be quite intriguing to see how players do react. But at the end of the day, they're well prepared, they're well looked after, and they know what's coming. To have that break, extensive as it is, in the middle of the what are we talking? 2/5 of the season now. It's a strange one to deal with, but footballs have to be quite flexible and adaptable by nature, and today's no different.
Yeah, and in a way, in a strange kind of way, the players who were away at the World Cup are ultimately probably going to be sharper than the ones who were here, weren't they? Because of the games they were playing. Maddison went to play, didn't play a minute. Mendy went away, 4 appearances for Senegal. Ward played a couple of games for Wales. Wout Fast didn't play for Belgium. Castagna and Tielemans did, and Marty likewise for Ghana. Newcastle had participants there as well. Bruno Guimaraes had a couple of appearances for Brazil en route to the quarter-finals. You had Trippier playing a trio of games for England. Callum Wilson played a couple of times, and Fabian Schär a couple of times for Switzerland. So, both teams have had players away, but ultimately over the last few days, it's where as a coach you earn your money and knit it all back together again. You've had a chance to embed some players back in who've had injuries. Leicester have lost Johnny Evans again. Yeah. They've got Soyuncu now back in the mix. Maybe we'll see him soon, who knows. But ultimately, it's just an unknown people. Some leagues have a winter break every single season. You see in the likes of Poland and Ukraine and Russia where they break because of sub-zero temperatures. They stop football in December, don't come back again until near March. So, it's something new for us, and I think probably as the football world progresses over the next 20-30 years, they're already talking about the next World Cup after USA, Canada, Mexico going to Saudi Arabia. We could well be back in the same situation again. Who knows? Anyway.
Yeah, exactly. There are arguments for and against, James, aren't there? It's about the individual at the end of the day who goes out there, be professional, be focused, and go and perform.
The Premier League is back, and it's a first game at King Power Stadium for almost 2 months as Leicester City host high-flying Newcastle United. Both successful in the Carabao Cup. Now it's a chance for the Foxes to win 3 consecutive games in just under 2 years. Well, you can hear bugler Paul Hing at the moment. welcoming the two sides onto the field of play beneath us here. A full house at King Power Stadium, and flags being waved all around us here. Some 2,500 have been distributed among the fans, and there is a loud ovation from the away section in the far corner as we look across as well. Leicester City against Newcastle United is coming up live in just a few minutes' time here in the East Midlands. A bitterly cold day, but blue skies overhead with the sun poking through. The pitch in perfect condition. Premier League football is back with us once again, and it has been a long old wait since that game down at West Ham on the 12th of November. Leicester last playing here in the league against Manchester City on the 29th of October, that 1-0 defeat. And they're trying to really rescue some home form this season. Haven't got the best record so far. Only Southampton have won fewer points on their home patch. And Leicester have won one more point away from home so far, but they've really got to knuckle down with the home games in the second half of the season, haven't they?
Yeah, that's right, James. So I was a little bit distracted just looking at Newcastle's line-up there and taken aback a little bit by the physicality and the size of them there. It's certainly something Leicester are going to have to deal with this afternoon. Look at it, there's 5 or 6 of them. I mean, we know about Byrne and Botman. Byrne's 6'7", Botman's not far behind, but Joe Linton, Chris Wood, their Longstaff is sizeable as well. Leicester lacking a little bit height size wise. There's certainly something for them to contend with, and you certainly don't want Nick Pope coming up for corners either, do you?
No, he's a big guy
on in the game, but
it's a strange old Newcastle squad, which we'll get to in just a few moments' time. But ahead of kick-off here, there is going to be a moment of reflection for 1966 World Cup winner George Cohen, who very sadly passed away on the 23rd of December at the age of 83. The former Fulham right back of nearly 500 appearances in the 50s and 60s. The World Cup win was the only trophy of his career, which is quite an incredible achievement, isn't it? He won 37 caps for England throughout his career, and sadly one of those 66 heroes is now no longer with us. A period of applause here ahead of kick-off. Here we go then. The Premier League show is back in town, and Leicester City ready to get on with things here against Newcastle United, who Matt Elliott, and maybe not the same looking side as many would have expected going into the summer. Plenty expected so much money to be splashed around, but it's many of the players who were there last season.
Yeah, it's been slowly but surely, hasn't it? But all of a sudden, developing a strength in depth in the squad. I mentioned a little while ago, John Shelvey, Callum Wilson, Alexander Isaac, all not featuring in the squad at all today, and there's still a little bit of strength on the bench as well, although there isn't a direct replacement for Chris Wood, the centre forward today, or Maximan can obviously play in the forward areas, but there's a confidence about Newcastle. Leicester have to be on top of their game today, you feel.
So both sides in their traditional home colours. Newcastle standing over the ball inside the centre circle. They will be the ones getting us underway. Hopefully Leicester can end their year here at King Power Stadium on a high. The countdown is complete. The referee for this one today is Jared Gillett, and ahead of kick-off both sides take a knee. We're ready to go. Leicester City against Newcastle United. It's played back.